You are now tuned into Flippin the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to episode 78 of Flippin the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron. He's Chris Infante, and today we're joined by the Draft Network's very own Jordan Reid. What's going on, guys? How you feeling?
I'm okay. I'm getting close to you in the hair department.
I don't know why you just don't go full throttle and just shave your head.
I gotta at least have a hairline.
How you feeling, Jordan?
I'm good. Pleasure being here. Thank you guys for having me on.
Thank you for coming on and embracing the chaos that is Flipping the Birds.
And Eagles Twitter.
Yeah, and Eagles Twitter. Let's definitely announce that. So, should we just dive into it, or
let's go for it? Yeah, we're 16 days away. Well, first, no, let's not dive into it. First, like we were talking about a few minutes ago, for the most part, people are just creatures of what gets put out there, articles wise. Who's writing what? Who's writing this mock draft? Who's writing that mock draft? Where does this person have this player at? And they're like, oh, this article was written by this person. And a lot of people just know you as TDN's Jordan Reid. So how did you? For those people that don't know, how did you get to this point? I know you were a former player and a coach. So how'd you get to this point, and then what led you to doing this for a living?
Yeah, I kind of fell in this occupation by accident, honestly. And I started off as a player at a small school called North Carolina Central University. It's in Durham, North Carolina, about 5 minutes away from Duke. Everybody has heard of Duke before. So about 5 minutes away from there. I played quarterback for 4 years, started 3. Then after that, I transitioned right to coaching. I didn't have any pro aspirations or anything like that. I always wanted to be a head coach of a football team on any level, whether it was high school, college, or NFL possibly. But, with coaching, I kind of fell in love with scouting just because my final 2 years coaching, I was at Central for 5 years coaching quarterbacks and running backs. And then I was a recruiting coordinator in 2017 and 2018. That's really where I found my love for scouting. I had no idea that I liked scouting as much as I did. And, just putting a team together, recruiting different individuals, sitting in living rooms, talking to moms, dads, guardians, and then just figuring out different types of players and getting experience with them. That's really where I found my love. I really enjoy doing this, seeing developing players, but also just seeing them come in and then how they leave your building as well. That's something that I've always enjoyed, the development process. And then of course, the initial process of just finding them initially, whether it was in the state of North Carolina or even out of state. So, like I said, scouting and moving all over the country and things of that nature is something that I've always loved. But the journalism part is something that I always wanted to combine with football. I've always been a football junkie, a sports junkie in general growing up. So I wanted to figure out a way to combine journalism and then my love for scouting as well. And then in 2018, I got out of coaching, wanted to move back home and be a little bit closer to my family. So there was an upstart company called the Draft Network, and they were looking for somebody that was a former player that had background in scouting as well as coaching as well. So I kind of got lucky, and that's why I said, I fell into this occupation by accident. I had no idea that, I was going to be a quote unquote an NFL scout for a company. So I'm blessed to be in this occupation, and I love every single day of it.
And I'm pretty sure I can speak for Chris as well. We follow your work pretty specifically. You kind of just embrace this role. You've taken off to a whole nother level. How does it feel to actually just take everything that you've seen on the field and literally dissect? Because you guys dissect almost every single player in the draft. So that's countless hours of work.
Yeah, but it's football, so it's not really work to me. I'm used to watching film. When I was a coach, we watched countless hours of film whenever we're scouting somebody or if we're self-scouting ourselves on the bye week. So I think the different lenses that I've had experience with as a player, as a coach, and then now as a scout, I see the game from so many different angles. So if I'm scouting somebody like Justin Fields. I know exactly what he's looking at on this read just because I've been in this situation before as a quarterback, but as a coach, I could talk about some of the progressions that he's supposed to go through and if he was able to execute it. And then as a scout, you're talking about the background areas, doing the background check, talking to some people close to him, just figuring out exactly what type of person he is and just trying to paint the picture as a whole, not only with his helmet on, but also with his helmet off. So having experience with so many different lenses has really helped me get better as a scout. And, followers and all that other stuff, that don't mean nothing to me, honestly. Hard work is hard work. And whenever you put in the time and do all that stuff, you eventually get noticed.
Man, I think that aspect you just talked about with who the player is behind the helmet, that's something that we really like to dive into. Also, we've had a few prospects on. A couple weeks ago, we had Quinn Miners on. Everybody loves him. After the Senior Bowl, no one knew who he was, and then Senior Bowl and all that stuff. And we're like, we need to dive into you. A couple weeks before that, we had Patty Fisher on. Last year, we went through with Justin Sternad, Akeem Davis-Gaither. We had Kayvon Wallace on after he got drafted, Graylin Arnold, and we just would like to dive into who these players are, because everybody, like you said, everybody's like, the players to them is just a guy with the helmet on, and for us it's like, no, they're more than that. So definitely what you do is definitely we relate to that a lot, and and we love your work and all that. But I really think your mocks that you put out have been closer to what Eagles fans have wanted to happen and all that. So I know Trevor's that just came out where we like that one too with the trade. But it's going in right now right into this whole Eagles
chaos.
Yeah.
Hell.
Before the trade went down, was it pretty much set in stone in your mind like this team's going to get Jamar Chase? Or do you think, is there real smoke to that fire? Is there real fire that's going to come out? That's coming out of that smoke in Cincinnati that Jamar Chase is going to reunite with Joe Burrow, and they're going to deal with tackle later on in the draft.
I mean, Cincinnati is very tight-lipped with what they like to do. They're one of the harder teams that's kind of hard to get information out of, especially with them having like a limited scouting department and then just not a huge database as a whole as far as what they've liked to do in years past as well. They're kind of different. They go against the grain a little bit from what we have seen. I mean, Joe Burrow was an obvious pick for them last year. Everybody knew that was one that they were going to make. But I think it comes down to two people with this pick, and it's Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell, in my honest opinion. And I don't really know which direction that they're going to go right now. Honestly, I don't even think they know right now, in my humble opinion, just because there's positives and negatives to both. And then with the Eagles, I'm honestly, I've said this a lot. My dad is a big time Eagles fan. He's been an Eagles fan since the mid 60s. So I've told him, like, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they go cornerback in the first round and then they try to get a receiver on day two. I don't think it's set in stone that they go wide receiver at 12 now, whether it's a Devonta Smith or a Jalen Waddle, whoever's left there for them. I don't necessarily think that they're going to go wide receiver now that they have traded back. They could go a J.C. Horn or a Patrick Surtain if one of them are there, and then try to come back in the second round and get somebody there. So I wouldn't put a shoe in as far as them taking a wide receiver in the first round. I know that will make a lot of Eagles fans mad, but with this cornerback class being top heavy, maybe they want to go ahead and get one of those top three guys, whether it's Farley, Surtain, or Horn, or if they're high on Newsome. Newsome is a guy that's getting a lot of top 20 buzz right now as well. So maybe they want to go ahead and get one of their guys and, let's say, take advantage of this deep wide receiver class on day two.
Now, I did a little mock a couple weeks ago that I got that Eagles fans are absolutely angry for, because I just look around this division and I see Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Kenny Galladay, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, and that's just naming the division. And then later on, they're going to still be playing Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. They're playing Keenan Allen next year. They're playing all these receivers. They're playing, like, I want to say, out of the top 20 in receiving yards next year, I think they were playing like 13 of those wide receivers in the top 20. So I did one where they had J.C. Horn at 12 and Ifeatu Melifonwu in the second round. is it so crazy to think, because I'm with you, this wide receiver class is so deep, and I really think that these fans that are so hung up on, especially the one guy who commented on, I don't know who those guys in the later rounds are. I hate this draft. I'm like, okay. Like in mine, I went J.C. Horn, I went Horn, Melifonwu, then I went Brevin Jordan in the third. I'm just, everybody's anticipating Zach Ertz being traded. And I think Jordan's a really good replacement for him. And then I went Immature Bebe in the fourth round. And this guy who can jump almost 4 feet straight up in the air and pluck the balls out of nowhere. I think he's going to be a really good player. Is it so crazy to suggest the Eagles going double dipping at corner to kind of
justify your
yeah, I am kind of. Are
you still a little mad about that?
I am. I don't hold grudges.
Okay, I just want to clarify.
It's so crazy to suggest that this team with a defensive coordinator who has such a good history of developing corners, that right now they only have Darius Slay really, to take advantage of this. Is that like such a crazy thing, or is it really the Eagles should go wide receiver corner wide receiver, whichever, vice versa in the first 2 rounds,
or corner quarterback?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think double dipping that corner is crazy at all. Now, do I think they'll do it? No. But I mean, is it out the realm of possibilities? I don't think so either. But I think they're going to take a wide receiver eventually, just because with them getting that extra first round pick, or potentially 3 first round picks next year, I think they have to figure out what they have in Jalen Hurts, especially this year. Just because they have to set him up with success as best as they can. They have to surround him with weapons. That's why I was kind of surprised that they traded back, especially now they're probably not in contention for Jamar Chase. He's probably going to go at 5 or 6 or even 7. I'd be surprised if he gets past Detroit at 7. But maybe they have somebody else that they like, and maybe it was important to them, to Howie Roseman, that he wanted to recoup some of those picks. And now potentially having those 3 first-round picks next year, you have plenty of ammo to move up to trade up for any guy that you want. So I think they're going to go wide receiver somehow in the first 2 rounds, whether it's in the first round or even the second round, just because you have to figure out what you have quickly in Jalen Hurts, just because you have to make a decision at the quarterback spot. And you don't want to make the same mistake that you made with Carson Wentz either.
So I want to pick your brain about Jalen Hurts, because a lot of Eagles, I don't want to say Eagles fans, a lot of Eagles Twitter is of the mindset that Eagles need a quarterback. They need a Justin Fields. They need a Trey Lance, opposed to Jalen Hurts. Chris and I have spoken about it. I mean, I personally feel like Jalen, if you give him the time to develop, if you give him the right weapons around him, he could be more than just a solid quarterback in this league. He's more than just a running quarterback to me. What is your opinion of Jalen Hurts in year 2 without having the issue of Carson Wentz around, the issue of pretty much any big name quarterback around him?
Joe Flacco.
Oh, come on.
It's kind of TBD, honestly, to be determined. And I mean, I think he showed plenty of positive signs a year ago. The Saints game was great, even though they predominantly used him as a runner. I thought he had some really highs and lows last year, which is expected for a rookie quarterback. I would have loved to see him play more in that last game, but I'm sure you guys have debated about that plenty.
Which makes no sense now. So
about that last game, I would love to see him play a little bit more, just because
we don't really have a huge more of Nate Sudfeld.
Right, man. Don't get me started on that. But I wish we had a bigger sample size. I like Jalen coming out. I thought they took him a little bit earlier than my liking, though. I would have been a little bit more comfortable taking him probably in the 3rd round as opposed to a 2nd. That probably was the biggest shocker of day 2 to me by far. I'm pretty sure that surprised the Eagles fan base as well when they selected him as high as they did. So I don't know if he can ever be like a top 12 quarterback. But as far as like a top 15 to 20 guy, I think he definitely can get there. But it's just a matter of surrounding him with as many weapons as possible. He has the intangibles. His leadership ability is off the charts. He's a natural born leader. That's something that you hear about him glowingly. Just seeing him at the Senior Bowl, he got better every single day when he had that pro coaching. I think he's an okay thrower for the most part. I don't think he's ever going to be a high level guy as far as getting into that, above average or elite territory. I don't think he's ever going to be there. But I think Sirianni's offense really caters to his skill set a lot, and I think he'll be just fine. But I think you have to have, I would say, leveled expectations with him immediately, especially the Eagles aren't going to turn over these weapons immediately as far as on the perimeter, just because we don't know what Rager's going to be in year 2. things kind of came along slowly for him. Ertz is probably going to be gone. They're probably going to trade him eventually. So that really leaves him with Goddard as his main target. And I mean, the Eagles aren't working with a whole bunch on the perimeter. Let's just be honest about that. So they have to figure out a way to upgrade the weapons to help him out, just because he's not a quarterback that can really uplift below par surroundings. He's not that type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you think? No, you said, like, I kind of agree, with the whole top 15 to 20 thing, because even in his college tape, it didn't really show that kind of guy. And I mean, I know a lot of quarterbacks show maybe a little less in college, and then they come out and they pros and they do a little better. But it just really, to me, I like the guy. I really like the guy. He's got great attitude and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't see him being a top 10 quarterback in the league. But and if they do surround him with the proper talent, like you were saying before, like if we're in the Carson Wentz situation all over again, then what the hell's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just this whole when they were at 6, they may still draft a quarterback at 6, or they're still looking at a quarterback at 12. I just don't see the damn point in all this. It's just stupid. But with the right weapons around him, even being a top 15 to 20 quarterback, do you think he's the type of guy that can really not maybe lift the weapons around him, but kind of get them
level.
but kind of get them in the chemistry. Like if you look, like, remember in 2017, the Eagles coming in weren't really that talented on paper. Like they weren't widely. I mean, they're never really widely expected to do a lot of things, but their chemistry was off the charts. Like their touchdown celebrations, their turnover celebrations, all that stuff. And they really willed it with all that stuff to a Super Bowl win. Do you think Jalen Hurts has that type of leadership to be that kind of guy with better weapons around him to kind of bring the Eagles back to that, not Super Bowl, but perennial playoff contender and all that stuff?
Oh, 1,000%. Whenever you're talking about leadership with Jalen Hurts, that's going to be at the top of his resume. And I mean, he was named a team captain as soon as he transferred from Alabama to Oklahoma. So that just goes to speak about his character, his football character, his leadership, his intangibles as well. So leadership is one of the least worries that you'll have about him. And that's one of the things that you want as far as out of a young quarterback. And one thing I will say about Jalen is that wherever he has went, everybody around him has played hard. And that's the sign of a really good leader. And I think, I mean, even the Saints game, you guys saw it. Like, them dudes was playing hard with Jalen. Just because
Alshon
it was just like,
actually did stuff. Like, it was crazy.
It was like a new energy, and it was just like a gorilla was lifted off those guys' backs. It was a new fusion of just a new guy. It was like a breath of fresh air in a sense. So expectations are obviously going to be a little bit bigger for Jalen this year, just because he's not the new guy. And I always say the backup quarterback is always the most popular guy in town when your starter's struggling. Everybody wants to replace the starting quarterback, especially when you have an intriguing guy behind them. So he's going to come into the year a little bit different as far as his expectations. He's not the backup anymore. People have film on him now, so they can game plan for him as well. So we'll see what happens. But as far as the leadership ability, I think that's a minor question with him. I think that's one thing you know that you're going to get out of him.
Okay, so segueing away from Jalen, back to Jordan. You mentioned your dad is an Eagles fan. So where does your fandom lie? Are you a fan of a team, or are you just a fan of the game pretty much?
So I was a huge sports fan, as I told you guys growing up, and I kind of attached to players first, and then I got attached to teams. So I grew up in the height of the Randy Moss era, and I somehow became a Minnesota Vikings fan after that, just because I got attached to players first. Randy Moss was my guy. He was like a god to me on the field. And after that whole fiasco happened with him and they traded him to the Raiders, I still stayed with the Vikings. So that's where my allegiance lies right now. My dad is always like, man, where did I go wrong with you when he tells me that? So.
You're talking to a guy in me who grew up in the Bronx in New York, and I'm a Red Sox fan. So it's
wow.
And obviously I'm an Eagles fan too. But at the same time, my allegiance is lying basketball with the Timberwolves. I grew up a KG fan. I love KG, and then when he got traded to the Celtics, I was like, nah, I'm not gonna. I'm staying. And then it was Kevin Love, and then he got traded. I just gotta stay. Now it's Cat until he gets traded. It's just the Minnesota sports, I guess.
It's starting to sound like Philly sports.
It's like being a Mets fan.
Oh, listen, I don't care. I'm used to it. It's fine. My team has always been bad. I'm good.
That's true. All right, so going into this draft now, so we're going wide receiver, corner, and this team has they have so many needs.
Mhm.
It's just whether it be and maybe safety is not too much of a need now that they got Minnesota's boy Anthony Harrison now, and even Eric Wilson. Well, now that you say you're a Vikings fan, how do you feel about those signings for the Eagles and both Anthony Harris and Eric Wilson?
They're good ones. And Anthony, well, both of them were actually undrafted free agents when they signed both of them. The Vikings are really good with finding like those diamond in the rough types of players. And the only reason Anthony went undrafted was because he had shoulder surgery coming out. And, he led the country in interceptions his senior year at Virginia. He had 8, I believe it was. So he's always been that ball hawk type of free safety. And that's something that the Eagles have really lacked on the back end. I know Rodney McLeod was kind of brought in to be that type of guy, but he's been hurt for the most part. But he's still a good player. But I think Anthony Harris is going to give them a little bit more on the back end than what they have had in years past. So very reliable as a run support player as well. I think he was kind of disgruntled a little bit, and he kind of powdered a little bit when he was on the franchise tag a year ago just because he's an older guy. And he wanted to go ahead and hit free agency, but they slapped him with the franchise tag. That was something that Minnesota doesn't use a whole bunch either. I think like the last time they used it was like 2005 on Chad Greenway or something like that. So it was a long time since they had used the franchise tag. So he was a little bit disgruntled there. I think that's why they ended up letting him go. They just kind of wanted a new scenery. Both sides did. But he's a good player. He'll end up being a good player for Philadelphia. I thought it was a bargain, the price that they got him at. I think it was like $5 million. I was really surprised by that for a 1-year deal. And the same goes for Eric Wilson, another player that they bought in as an undrafted free agent. He'll give you lots of value as a Sam or a Will linebacker. He's played both of them. He filled in for Anthony Barr last year when he went down with a torn pec, and he was really good. He's always been a good player, going to be on every single special teams, brings lots of energy. Not super great in coverage, but as far as a run defender and then running sideline to sideline, he's definitely going to give you that. So as far as value free agents, guys on 1-year deals, I think both of them are really good value.
Okay.
And that's what Howie could do. Just pull out the wallet and be like, "Here's an IOU."
So before you jump into the draft, just a real quick question. Eagles obviously have a big need of something happening at linebacker post, in my opinion. We had Sean Bradley on a couple weeks back. Alex Singleton had a kind of some of a breakout year, you could really say. TJ Edwards is there, and that's really it. Davion Taylor.
Yeah, Davion Taylor, Jannard Avery moving back to linebacker this year too.
Do you see that more of a need for bodies or a talent, or just a need of development with that young core?
I just think they need that. I don't know how he doesn't value linebackers a whole bunch, especially early on in the draft, but I just think they need that headliner guy. The Eagles haven't had that alpha in a long time. And I always tell people, like, I loved playing with the Eagles defenses on video games. And if you think about it, going back to, Jeremiah Trotter and all these guys that they had back then, like that's when the Eagles defense was at their best. They had that alpha guy in the middle, and they just haven't had that guy in a very long time. And right now, I just think they have a bunch of guys there right now. And there's not that, guy that can wear the green dye that people fear in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah. So Jordan Hicks could have been that guy.
He was just too injured.
He was just too injury prone. But before that, it was D'Amico. Even I had high hopes for Stuart Bradley a few times. Stuart Bradley, I really liked him at the Mike position. But yeah, it was pretty much D'Amico and Jeremiah Trotter over the last 20 years, really. It's crazy how I'm pretty sure how he got stuffed into a locker by a linebacker in high school. He just doesn't want to do that anymore.
He fell in love with safeties instead, apparently.
But so now going into that position, now if we're safely assuming Eagles are going wide receiver, corner, wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, is third round? I mean, that last year they spent a 3rd round pick on Davion Taylor, who played all of 54 snaps and something like that this year. We don't know if it's a combination of Jim Schwartz just not finding him, and we kind of have some insight on that from Sean Bradley a couple weeks ago, where he wasn't playing as much because he said on Fridays they'd be like, "Hey, you got the playbook down?" and he was like, "No, I don't know it." Which is kind of scary. But so maybe Davion Taylor is the same way. We know how raw he was coming out of Colorado. But is third round really the round where we really see them maybe target? I don't think I don't see McGrone being available at 70. Maybe because those guys I feel like are going. We know Parsons is going in the first round. We know Jamin Davis is going in the first round most likely. Maybe Baron Browning going in the first round. But then you see, all these other linebackers definitely high second round, maybe. So who's that like late third, fourth, fifth round Mike linebacker that you think that could really step in and be that guy for the Eagles?
Maybe not necessarily a Mike. I think this draft class really lacks a true Mike in the middle. Parsons is really one of the few guys in the middle that you really trust. And after that, you have a bunch of guys that really play on the outside. Parsons and Jamin Davis are really the only true Mikes in this draft as far as headliner names that you can really think of. The guys you mentioned, Baron Browning, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who's probably more of a rover / safety that you really want to keep on the perimeter. But outside of those guys, I don't see anybody else going early. Zaven Collins, of course, he's probably going to be an outside backer as well. But Chaz Surratt is one name that is probably can play weak side linebacker, or he can play strong side linebacker. I think could be fine at either one. You don't really want him in the middle just because he really struggles to process a little bit. That's something that you notice on his Carolina tape, and he kind of struggles getting off blocks a little bit as well. So limited him to one side, whether it's strong side or weak side, I think will really help him out a lot. Pete Warner from Ohio State is another name that tested really well at Ohio State's Pro Day, and I think he could go a little bit higher than what some people are expecting. He could probably go late second, early third. And then one name a lot of people have really forgotten about just because he didn't play really well last year was Dylan Moses from Alabama. One player that I think could probably go. I think he'll probably end up going in the third round. I think Philly would probably have some interest in him, and I think it would be a really good fit for him. And if you're looking for a late round guy that I think could probably be intriguing, his name is Tony Fields II from West Virginia.
West Virginia, yep.
He started at Arizona his first few years and then transitioned to West Virginia. After that, he played predominantly Mike linebacker, but I think he's probably going to be a wheel on the next level.
I love the Dylan Moses,
Yeah, last year before he opted to go back, I was fully on board the Eagles breaking that linebacker curse in the first round and going Dylan Moses in the first round. Even if it was kind of for a redshirt year, just looking at his 2019 tape, I was like, this dude, this is what we need. And then 2020 happened, and it's you're right. People have really kind of forgotten about him. Even look at your website's draft board and player rankings. You see Dylan Moses earlier, maybe February, player ranked 50 to 60. And right now he's in the 130s. Mm-hmm. So it's and I know it's a combination of other players testing so well in their pro days and doing really well, and others not so much. But it's just crazy how he's fluctuated. And you're right. I think he'd be a perfect fit if he's healthy. He's a tackling machine, and it's what these Eagles need. They need people who can actually bring down the football outside of Alex Singleton. But even he had his fair share of missed tackles too. It's just crazy how the Eagles linebackers and even defenders really, for the most part, have been taught to really dive at ankles so many times, and then you just watch week after week all these opposing players just hurdle them. And I feel like if you could quantify the amount of times and really studied that a player was hurdled last year and even the year before, probably most Eagles players, because they were just Zeke hurdled them. Even old man Vernon Davis that played 2 years ago hurdled Sendejo. But it's just crazy how these defenders just lack good mechanics. I guess it's just crazy. So I forget. Brian, you go. I lost my train of thought.
So you have Dylan Moses as a good fit for the Eagles right now. You also have a very popular name as a good fit that you tweeted out the other day for the Eagles. And a lot of people are getting on board with, the fact that the Eagles will go corner with J.C. Horn because a lot of people feel like he's the best corner in the draft. Ironically, you also have him on the top of your cornerback rankings. Can you just specify why do you feel like that J.C. Horn will be the right fit in Philly?
Yeah, so I'll just start with the player first. J.C., we know he has NFL bloodlines. That doesn't need to be repeated over and over again. He's the son of Joe Horn, a big time receiver for the Saints a few years ago, back in the 2000s, early 2000s or so. But what I love about JC, so when I'm evaluating corners, I love guys that are just absolute assholes, so to speak. And if you're talking about elite guys, just think about all the elite guys at the position: Jalen Ramsey, Jair Alexander, Tre'Davious White. I could go on and on of these guys that are just what I like to call extroverts. And I think you have to have that kind of edge to yourself, especially at that position, just because half the battle is confidence. And you have to feel like you belong on the field at that position, just because you're going against some of the best of the best. And Chris, earlier, you talked about these receivers that are really good in the division. He's going to see these guys twice a year. Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, some of these other players that are in the NFC East. So you have to have that guy on the perimeter that feels like he belongs, especially early on as a rookie, just because they're going to test that guy. And with Nick Sirianni's, with that defense that they're bringing in there, I really like the way he fits in that, just because they're probably going to run a predominantly press man scheme for the most part. And, you know, they have a really good track record of developing cornerbacks, as you guys mentioned earlier. And I think JC has some things that he needs to fine tune as far as how grabby he is. I think he had 7 penalties total last year. And it's just a matter of him just not trusting his technique. He's in spots where he can make plays, but there's some change of direction things that I think he needs to clean up. And it's just a matter of him trusting himself and flipping his hips and just staying in position. But as far as the player overall, I'm a big fan of him. I love everything about him. There's some things that he does need to clean up, just like any other prospect. But as far as his mentality that he's going to bring to the table, I mean, you guys seen that the pro day, he said, yeah, I'm the best defensive player in this draft class. And I just love cornerbacks like that. And, you know, just going back to the corners that I've loved in years past, Marcus Peters was one that I always had a huge draft crush on. Jair Alexander, Jalen Ramsey, some of the others that I've mentioned. I just love cornerbacks that are extroverts, just because you have to have that type of swagger to yourself walking through the door. And playing opposite of Darius Slay, another player that Slay's not a huge extrovert. It's kind of like a quiet confidence with him, and he's still a really good player. But I just love young cornerbacks like a Jair Alexander that aren't afraid to bark back.
And what an incredible position he'll be in. I mean, to learn from one of the best, you know, that's done it there in Darius Slay. I mean, to kind of groom him. You okay, Chris?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm listening. I don't have to talk all the time. I don't have to talk all the time. It's because, you know, when I shave my head, my hair, and I was also outside for a long time today. So now the sun was 78 degrees hitting my face. So I'm about to look, but I'm going to gradually go into Brian's skin color soon, and then I'm going to go to Jordan's skin color maybe in May. Like it's just it's gonna happen. I'm just hoping that the mask doesn't give me just like dark hair, and then just
it most likely is. That's why you should grow a beard.
I'm gonna look like an Oreo.
You should just give up and grow a beard.
No, because like under the mask, it sweats and all that stuff, and it's just.
I mean, if you take care of your beard, it really doesn't.
I still sweat. Like there's a different like taking care of my beard has nothing to do with my sweat glands. Like what the fuck. So speaking JC Horn. So obviously he'll be outside CB2 right now, maybe for just 1 year, because knowing Howie, they'll probably cut Slay after this year, after he has like 8-9 picks, because he's going to be 31 and they just don't want his salary anymore. Then we'll go into the slot area, and right now it's Avonte Maddox, and who played better as a safety when he was a rookie, and then like last year they were throwing him all over the place. I mean, I know that the injuries threw him all over the place, but being a 5'9" and being an outside corner, it's kind of. Do you see anyone as an upgrade over Avonte Maddox in the slot, or do you think like just proper development of him is really going to give them what they should have had last year, maybe even as a rookie?
I think Avonte's kind of hit his ceiling as far as what he can be as a player, just because he lacks the adequate length that you want to see at the position. And there was just some circumstances of where he was in position, but he just didn't have the adequate body frame in order to make plays on the ball. And that's something that he really has always struggled with in his career. And, it's just not his fault, but I mean, that is just what he was given as far as his body structure. He can't really control what he can do. I think he's a very scrappy player. Loves to come down and tackle as well. That's something that you notice about him. Very aggressive player too, but I just think they need an upgrade at that spot. And, at nickel, there's plenty of guys that they can get in this draft. Elijah Molden from Washington is one guy that I love. He can play safety or he can play corner, depending on whatever you want him to do. Has NFL bloodlines. Dad was a former successful player for the New Orleans Saints a few years back. So he has the NFL bloodlines that you love to see at the position. But one player that I think will be a home run pick for them, I think can play inside or outside if they want to take him in the second round, would be Asante Samuel Jr. I think he would be a really good selection for them just because he gives you that inside out versatility. I think he will be fine on the outside. And that's something that he talked about. He said, I'm the same size as Trey White and also Jair Alexander. So why are y'all knocking me when I'm the same exact size as those guys? Very aggressive. He has that alpha mentality that I talk about a lot too. So if they want to take him in the second round, if he's there, I think he'll be a really good pick.
Imagine the chirping.
Yeah.
Imagine the chirping of having J.C. Horn and Asante Samuel Jr. in that secondary. Like, it's just like
That'd be phenomenal.
I mean, they'd piss some wide receivers off. I mean, maybe they could coax these wide receivers to some unsportsmanlike penalties.
I mean, at this point, I might buy into your theory of double dipping at corner first and second round just to focus on the defense this year. You bring in, some wide receivers in the later rounds to help out Jalen, but if you can really build up the defense to how we used to be before the Jim Shore era.
That was my argument about corners. I'm just not the type of person to really give up on a player after 1 year, except for J-Jaw. It's just seeing Rager not being utilized correctly last year, and they kept using Greg Ward on screens and punt returns. Fulgham was the best receiver in the league for like 4 or 5 weeks, and then they shut him down for Alshon Jeffrey. And Hightower showed his flashes. Quez showed his flashes too. I just feel like we should really, really develop those guys instead of kicking some to the curb for new guys and seeing how those go. And maybe adding I really like Immature Baby. I think he's going to be really good. Even these later round guys, maybe just go like that. I like Dax Milne as a Greg Ward replacement. He has permanent stickum on his hands. He can snag anything, and I feel like with a guy like Jalen Hurts and his accuracy issues, might need a guy like Milne to help him out there. But so now we got corner as a need. Safety is, I guess, still kind of a need, even with Harris there, and because McLeod will be back maybe. You got Kayvon there. You still got Graylin Arnold there. So maybe not the big need up top, but is there any guys that you think I love Andre Sisco, but I think he's going to go a little too early for them. I love Jamar Jefferson. I think he's going to be really good too. Are any guys that you think at safety will really fit this bill as maybe an in-the-box guy I know Kayvon's more of an in-the-box guy too, but now with Harris being back there and being that ball-hawking guy, do you see a guy that in the later rounds, maybe 4th or 5th round, that could really come in and make an impact on for the secondary?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few that I like in that area. Taloa Hufanga, he's one player that I really like a lot. More of a box type of safety. You don't really want him on the roof. Plenty of hitting power. Loves to come downhill and strike people as well. So if you're looking for that low safety to be that complement to Anthony Harris, I think he definitely could be one of those guys. A late round player that I like a lot is DeMar Hamlin from Pittsburgh. He's one player that he actually came out last year, but he ended up going back to school. And he can play high or he can play low. Has a bunch of special team snaps as well. Has been special teams player of the year a couple times at Pittsburgh too. So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck with him there. I really like what he brings to the table as far as what he can be. Caden Stearns from Texas was one player that seemed to be highly ranked coming into the year, but he didn't have as good a year as what some people were thinking that he was going to have. So he's probably borderline top 100 type of guy. I think you probably could get him in the 3rd round. I think that's probably the sweet spot for him.
Now, what's your problem, Brian? You just in this.
No, I have no problem at all. Why would I have
Yeah,
a problem? I don't know. I mean, I don't think safety is such a dire need right now.
that's what I'm saying. But no, it's not. But you still got to look at guys that might fit. Now, offensive line. We got some names. Like just said, linebacker. We got names. But for the most part, offensive line I think is still pretty strong. Lane
Yeah, like a
Johnson's coming.
defensive line more than anything.
Yeah, Lane Johnson's coming back healthy, hopefully. Kelsey's coming back for a year, but his heir apparent, who knows who his heir apparent is. Sayamalo got hurt, obviously. Herbig was inconsistent, but I think he wanted it stronger. Who knows if they're going to have Dillard back, and who knows what kind of Dillard they'll get after inconsistent rookie year and then a year off because he got hurt. You got Mailata, who was a diamond in the rough. A little more rough than diamond, but he's still really good last year.
I don't know. Jordan kind of froze when he said my loud as a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, it's yeah.
No, he played well. He played well from what I saw.
He kind of looked at you like, wait, what?
I mean, when listen, it was kind of like that that ugly friend syndrome last year for the Eagles. You know, it's like when you got one decent looking girl in that room of ugly friends, they go, oh, that girl's a 10, when it's like really more like a 3 or 4. But when you got everybody around it as they're like more like 1s and 2s, then it bumps them up a little bit. But Mailata, for the most part, played pretty well for what he got thrown into.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got Driscoll. I'm hoping Matt Pryor never steps foot on the field again for them. So later round, I really like Trey Smith. I love Drake Jackson. I love Kendrick Green. I love those really interior line guys that can switch either or. But I think they're probably both more of a centers, right? They're more center than guard for both of them.
Yeah, for sure. And Drake Jackson is a little bit undersized at about 6'1" or 6'2". Excuse me, about 295 pounds. So kind of in that Kelsey mold of where he is a bit of a shorter center, but really athletic. So maybe they see him as kind of possibly an understudy to him that eventually could take over for Kelsey. I know he's kind of been muling retirement a little bit over the past few years, so maybe they need to go ahead and start looking for his replacement. So Drake Jackson definitely could be a viable option. Trey Smith, highly touted recruit coming in, does have some medical things going on in the background with him. He had to sit out a couple games in 2018 with some blood clots in his lungs. His mother also passed away too from some internal stuff that's going on with her as well. So he was flagged as far as some medical things that are happening in his background. But the past 2 years, he's had a clean bill of health. But we know with all 32 teams, the injury report is going to come back a little bit different for all of them. There's going to be some teams that are a little bit hesitant about that as well, especially when you're talking about an issue in the lungs, especially talking about blood clots too. So that's just peeling the curtain back a little bit with some of the things that are happening with him. But I mean, if you get him second or third round, I think that could be a potential steal for the Eagles.
Yeah, I love those guys. I think they're maulers. Like you said, like Drake Jackson, a little undersized, but that was Kelsey. Kelsey, 6th round, undersized. No one thought he'd make a roster. And now, looking legend.
One of the greatest ever do it. Now,
Legend.
I'm very curious about this because it is Howie Roseman drafting for the Eagles still. And we did move back to 12. Let's talk about the defensive line. I mean, we do have Derek Barnett, who hasn't been the most productive, but he's kind of had a decent year last year. Josh Sweat, who's been very productive, but is limited due to his knee issues. Outside of those two, Brandon Graham is Brandon Graham still. I mean, he had a wild motor last season, but the Eagles need help at the edge. It is Howie Roseman, so there's a strong possibility that they could go defensive line in the first round. I mean, is there anybody that you feel like is a guaranteed sure thing in the first round, or possibly somebody that they could even take advantage of in the later rounds?
Well, this edge class is a little bit different. And what I mean by different is that in years past, we've had that consistent or consensus guy at the top, whether it's a Chase Young or a Myles Garrett or the Bosa brothers. There's always been that transcendent type of player at the top, but we don't really have that this year. There's a mixture of guys at the top. Jalen Phillips from Miami, Gregory Rousseau from Miami, Azeez Ojulari from Georgia, Kwity Paye from Michigan, and the list goes on of some of these players that are kind of in contention for that first tier, but I don't think we have that headliner type of guy at the top. So I'm really interested to see how these guys do come off of the board. I don't think any team has them in the same exact order. Of course, it's never like that at any position. But as far as that one guy at the top, it wouldn't surprise me if like all teams have a different guy at the top. So this edge class, it definitely is interesting, for lack of better words.
So you don't have like that one standout right now, in your opinion?
So I like Ojulari the most of the bunch, but he's kind of a one-trick pony as far as the moves that he has. He doesn't really have an advanced repertoire right now. He needs some things that he needs to add. But as far as the most talented pass rusher, I think it's Jalen Phillips without question. I think he's a guy that comes to the door right away. As far as a seasoned pass rusher, he knows exactly what he's going to do there. Very good against the run as well, but he does have some off-the-field things that happened with him. He had a brief retirement due to some injury issues. He has the repeated concussions that he's had as well, especially when you're talking about injuries to the head. That's something that, you're a little bit wary of, especially when you're talking about a player in the first round that may be a little bit rich to some teams, especially considering his head injuries.
Interesting.
I mean, later on, I don't know why I do, but I just love the prospect of Chris Rumph. I like he has, just looking at his body, he's like a power forward.
And they could get him in the late rounds.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, more like a 6th round guy, maybe even 7th. But like I just think he has all the what like a defensive line coach wants to just mold and just help him put on weight and just keep that intensity. And just looking at like him coming into this season, he was touted as one of the best edge rushers in the whole country. And I just think like I don't know why. Like I just he's like he's been one of my my guys. I really like him. I feel like he'll go to the Bears because that's where his dad coaches now. But it's just I think he's gonna be really good as one of those developmental guys. I mean, because the Eagles had the developmental and Josh Sweat. I feel like Derek Barnett's always a developmental guy, but he was obviously a 1st round pick. But just looking at those kind of freaky athlete guys at edge, that he always comes to mind. Kunsey too from Buffalo. No, he's at Duke too. No, Kunsey's at Buffalo.
Buffalo, yep.
Yeah. I like him. I like him a lot too. But like Brian said, like edge, it's not so much a need, but like at the same time, it is really a need because Brandon Graham can only play Brandon Graham level ball for only so long. Like last year was
phenomenal.
Out of nowhere.
He was
I don't know. I know he died down towards the end of the year, but that start was like holy shit. He still got it. What was I about to say? Sorry,
a lot today.
It's been a long day. You can go. Yeah. I don't know. Not really me today.
You really not? You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's just a long day.
Oh, sorry. Mets game is on.
See with the
Relax. All right, Jordan. So, I mean, before we wrap up, how do you see this draft going with the quarterbacks? Because that's something I did want to pick your brain about. Because I did mention before that I feel like most of these quarterbacks that they're talking about are not solely base running quarterbacks. Like Justin Fields, for example, the focal point on him is that he's a runner more than he's a pocket passer, but he's actually been more of a pocket passer than a runner. I mean, how do you see everything playing out from 1 to 5 right now with how these teams are so scouting these quarterbacks? I mean, because Mac Jones at 3 is kind of baffling to a lot of people right now.
Yeah, I mean, we know who's going number 1. I mean, Urban Meyer was in Trevor Lawrence's huddle at his pro day, so we know who's going to go number 1. We don't need to spend a lot of time there. But 2,
smoke screen.
I think Zach Wilson's probably going to go number 2 to the Jets. I think that's pretty much a definite right now. If I had to guess, number 3, it gets really interesting. If I had to guess right now, I would go with Justin Fields. I just don't believe the Mac Jones thing and the narrative that's going on around right now. I just don't see a situation of where you trade up or you essentially trade 3 first-round picks to come up and get a guy like Mac Jones when he doesn't really provide you much more than what Jimmy Garoppolo does. I think they're the same type of players.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make a strong argument that Jimmy G's an even greater athlete than what Mac Jones is. And the NFC West is going to be tough, man. And you talk about Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, and now Matthew Stafford. Is Mac Jones ever going to uplift you over any of those guys? I just don't see that happening.
Oh, man, imagine
but
Justin Fields in that division.
Right. Just imagine him in that division and then working under the tutelage of Kyle Shanahan. I think that would be a match made in heaven for him. They have ready-made weapons right now with Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and then Brandon Ayuk as well. So, I mean, he's coming to a great situation with the offensive line that's one of the better ones in the league, too. So, I think that would be a great fit for him. It may be Trey Lance. I think it's between either one of those two, honestly. I just don't see the Mac Jones thing happening. And then who knows where the next quarterback is going to go after that, honestly. The Panthers at 8 are now off limits with Sam Darnold there. Detroit at 7. I don't think Detroit is going to take a quarterback, honestly, just because Brad Holmes handpicked Jared Goff when they were with the Rams together. So I think he's going to give an opportunity for Jared to prove that he's the guy moving forward. And then they have plenty of first-round picks moving forward, too. So, and everybody knows that Detroit's probably going to be one of the worst teams next year, too, in the league. So I don't think they're in a rush to bring in a quarterback there just because the roster's so bad right now. And then who knows what's going to happen after that. New England may come up and take a quarterback. So you could find a situation of where maybe Denver at 9, there are argument could be made there that they take a quarterback if they want to bring in somebody to bring in competition for Drew Lock. But somebody's eventually going to trade up for Trey Lance or Mac Jones.
So you're saying that the Eagles completely lied about them trading back of Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase both being gone at this point. So early, before 6, like, kind of
I mean, I think they probably could have been in contention for either one of those guys, especially with Sewell potentially going 5. I think Pitts is probably going to go 4, honestly, to Atlanta. I think they believe in Matt Ryan. They're probably going to try to maximize his window for the next 2 to 3 years. I don't think they're in a rush, to bring a young guy in there. So I expect them to take Kyle Pitts. And, I mean, that's going to be hell for a lot of teams to game plan for with Julio.
As long as it's not in Dallas, I'm happy.
Yeah. Good luck with that. So, I think that's very intriguing for them.
I think for my own sanity, I need Pitts to go 4. Because if Pitts falls to 6, and like the Eagles could have had him right there.
Oh, they'll be riots in Philly for sure.
I could have just thinking of the way he fit in Philly so perfectly. He'd fit anywhere. He's just that good. But just the fact that you could have had a generational. I know you people throw this word out, all the generational talent, but the dude is really a generational talent, and you could have had that at 6. So I really need him to go to 4 just so I don't go crazy. So a few things before we go. Myself included in this. A lot of people, even though he was obviously incredible in college, absolutely incredible in college, with the Heisman and all that, I really just can't wrap my head around an NFL receiver being 6 foot 170. Like, is that with Devonta Smith? Like, I know he's played in the SEC and all that stuff, but so did Jalen Waddle, so did Kyle Pitts and Jamar Chase and all that. But is it something like worth worrying about with Devonta Smith, even with his elite route running and all that? He doesn't really have top end speed, but he gets away with it because his route running's incredible. But the dude, like, I coach high school, I coach varsity track. A lot of my high school seniors are the same weight as him, if not a little heavier. So I'm just like, you're gonna be facing D's like you mentioned before. You got Marcus Peters, who's a big dude, Jalen Ramsey, who's a big dude. All these physical guys. Can he really take it to the next level and succeed like he did in Alabama against these guys?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the production that he put up was in the best conference in America, in the SEC. You couldn't have really asked more of him than what he did last year. And, he went out there. He was fantastic against press. And I think the one thing that worries me little about Devonta Smith is that, yes, he is small And I say he could eat a cheeseburger for the rest of his life. He's not going to gain a pound. That's just how his frame is. He's going to be 170 when he retires, and he's going to be 170 when he enters the league. That's just how his body frame is. But he plays much bigger than what his size indicates. You see him going up in crowds and going up and catching the ball. He plays well over the middle. He's really good with keeping his frame clean off a press. He dominated Derek Stingley, a player that's probably going to be a top 10 pick this time next year. And then there's plenty of other corners that he went up and dominated against in the SEC as well. So he's dominating the best type of competition on the college level. And I think he has the potential to do the same thing on the next level. And I always use the term don't chase outliers when you're talking about players. He definitely is an outlier, but I think this is a special circumstance of a player that I think is going to be a really good pro just because of he plays much bigger than what his size does indicate.
So saying we get to 12 and the options are you're the GM. How he just got fired last night.
Thank God.
J.C. Horn, Jalen Waddle, and Devonta Smith are all on the board. Who are you going with?
I'm taking Waddle. Waddle's actually my favorite wide receiver in the draft. I love the dynamic that he brings to the table. You're not only going to get value as a wide receiver, he completely changes your special teams outlook as well. As far as a kick returner, he was very successful as that. He plays the game with the jetpack on. That's what I love to say. And we see how he was able to affect the game when he went down with the injury. He actually was Alabama's leading receiver in catches and also yards and touchdowns. So that just goes to show you the different type of dynamic that he brings to the table. Everybody that's playing around him looks as if they're playing in slow motion when they play against him as well. So I really like the progress that he made this past year. I think he became a much better route runner too. So I like Jalen Waddle a lot, but I think you also have to think of Jalen Hurts' skill set as well. And I'm not sure what his deep numbers are. I don't want to misspeak on that. But if Jalen isn't a super guy, as far as a guy that likes to test defenses deep a lot, Waddle doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. Then you would rather go with a guy like a Devonta Smith that can really attack all three levels of the field, but that's a little bit more polished in the short to intermediate areas as well.
Okay.
Yeah, like the thing with that we've seen on tape and our founder Liam Jenkins has pointed this out as well. We just feel like even though Waddle is a good, huge deep threat, we feel like this team just needs more of a true X more than anything else. Otherwise, that's what we've been banging the table for Jamar Chase, even Devonta Smith out there too. But we just feel like Waddle's more, with Rager being forced into the X position last year, where he's not good at. Do you think that would clash a little bit? Because since Waddle's not really your traditional X, and Rager and him are pretty much similar position-wise, not so much talent, but position-wise, do you think trying to scheme both of them in the same offense would pose some problems?
Yeah, I think that's what you worry about a little bit when you're talking about Rager and then Waddle. They bring a similar type of skill set to the table. And I think a lot of people kind of forget about Jalen Rager as far as what it can be in the underneath areas as well, just because I didn't follow the Eagles super closely, but one thing that I never understood about Doug was that he threw screens to the wrong people. Like he's throwing screens to Alshon Jeffrey and Greg Ward, as you mentioned. And I was just dumbfounded. Like, why aren't you scheming up these plays for Rager? That's what he specialized in when he was at TCU. So I think Sirianni would do a better job of getting players in adequate enough positions to where they can execute a little bit better than what they did a year ago. So I think Devonta Smith would make a little bit more sense just because I think Rager brings a little bit more of a very similar skill set to what Waddle does. And I think it kind of would be redundant a little bit just because of their skill sets really mirror each other as far as the down the field dynamic and then the type of routes that they're best at. So I would kind of reverse course a little bit and go with Devonta Smith just because I think they complement each other a little bit better.
Okay. Already having a better draft than Howie.
It's not that hard. So now, day 3, winding down, 5th, 6th, 7th round. Obviously, when you're in those rounds, you're more likely going to find a guy to develop and stash away, practice squad a couple years, maybe a year, and really see what you have later on, like the Jordan Mailata. And even though I love the Casey Toohill pick last year, obviously that didn't work out very well for us. I really like that pick. Do you see someone in the 5th, 6th round, maybe even 7th, that you are ready to just like hang it on the bulletin board right now? He's not a developmental guy. He's going to make an impact year one, no matter even if it's for the Eagles. Just straight out prospect. This guy probably going to get pushed down because of other positions being picked, but he's going to be a really impact player next year.
You talking about wide receiver or offensive line?
Or it doesn't matter.
I would go with Des Fitzpatrick. He's a wide receiver from Louisville, a player that he showed really well at the Senior Bowl. And, everybody talks about Tutu Atwell at Louisville, but the most impressive player to me at Louisville was Des Fitzpatrick. And very polished route runner, not a super fast guy. I think he ran in the high 4.4s, low 4.5s, if I'm not mistaken, but a very polished game overall. Very mature player. Grew up a lot last year as well, just talking to some people there. So Des Fitzpatrick definitely is one. Offensive tackle, his name is Tommy Doyle. He's from Miami, Ohio. Probably a developmental guy, more of your probably man gap power scheme type of player. But you talk about those maulers that you talk about, Chris, of a player that just gets a body on a body and just able to overwhelm defensive linemen. He's able to do that consistently. You could probably get him in the 5th or the 6th round. So Tommy Doyle and then also Des Fitzpatrick. Those would be 2 late round guys that I think would fit well on the Eagles.
Perfect. Sounds good to me. I mean, it already sounds like a better draft than how we could put together, which has me a little bit over anxious of the draft coming up. I'm not gonna lie. Thank God I go on vacation right after that.
Yeah, I just really hope that day 2 doesn't happen the same way as last year. Last year I was excited for Rigger. Like, I get it. Jefferson went the pick after. My preference was Jefferson. Last year I interviewed his assistant head coach Mickey Joseph. And this year, too, I interviewed him, too, more for Jamar Chase and Terrace Marshall. And I was like, but I was excited. But then Jalen Hurts came, and I was just like, Jeremy Chin was right there. And I just hope that doesn't happen. But okay, so I just reminded myself, okay, this is really my last thing for me. There's a lot of talk with the Eagles trading back in to the 1st round, probably with the Bills, maybe, and maybe there can be a thing with Zach Ertz going there too, in a trade. And they've been talking a lot with Terrace Marshall, and we feel like when I was talking to Mickey Joseph about him, I was like, I feel like people forgot about this guy. You talk about last year it was Justin Jefferson, this year it's Jamar Chase, and they got another stud over there too in Terrace Marshall. Between him and Rashad Bateman, because I love Rashad Bateman, who do you think is a better fit for the Eagles at X, or are they both pretty much perfect for that spot?
Well, Bateman gives you more of an inside-out dynamic, honestly. He has experience in the slot and then also outside as well. And Terrace played primarily in the slot, actually, last year. Missouri was one game of where he just absolutely dominated. And he's really good at defeating man coverage. I think that's something that really stands out about Terrace Marshall. I think he's probably going to end up going in the back half of the 1st round. So like you mentioned, if they want to trade back into the 1st round to get somebody like him, I think would be an interesting decision, for lack of better words, just because of, like I said, this wide receiver group is absolutely loaded on day 2. And I could go down a list of names on this group that I'm really intrigued by on day 2. But whether it's, De'Ami Brown, Amon St. Brown, Elijah Moore, Tylan Wallace. There's so many different names that you go on and about. And I say this every time when everybody is talking about wide receiver play. And if you should take one in the 1st round, I'm of the belief that you can take one in the 1st round. But I think day 2 is such a gold mine. And we've seen this in years past. And even going back to last year, if you think about it, Denzel Mims, Laviska Shenault, T. Higgins, the list goes on and on of these players that you can find on day 2 to where they could come in and be main contributors. And even going back to previous years, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, I could go on and on of these players.
JJ, I think, Whiteside.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about that.
Yeah.
Man, they took him way too early. But, yeah, I mean, there's so many different players that you can find on day 2 that I think could be really intriguing. But as far as who would be the better fit for the Eagles, I think it would be Terrace Marshall, even though I think Rashad Bateman's a little bit more polished. But if you want that big body guy that you could play on the inside and the outside, I think Terrace Marshall would be a little bit better fit.
Perfect. I think they've talked to him like 3 times.
Yeah, apparently they've been in contact with him a lot. But Jordan, as Chris promised, that was the last question because we don't want to keep holding up. And, it is getting kind of late. But we really, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing all your knowledge, man. Like seriously, like Chris and I, like I said in the beginning, we follow you specifically when it comes to everything you put out in regards to the draft. So again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for blessing our podcast, man, with your appearance.
No problem. I appreciate you guys, and if you ever need me back or want to have me on anytime, just let me know.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If we have a heartbreak on day 2 again, I'm calling you directly to have you on the podcast.
maybe we'll have you after the draft so you can ridicule Howie's picks and just that's fine.
If anything, you could bring your dad on to let that we could put a little bit more emotion into it.
I'm sure he'd be excited and fired up to talk Eagles.
But all right, guys, that's Jordan Reid from the Draft Network. I'm Brian Cameron. He's Chris Infante. We'll be back next Tuesday between the hours of 8 and 9 p.m. live, and you can catch replay on next day. Until next week.
Go Birds.
Yes, sir.